Michael Duff comes on top in the Yorkshire derby. Mansfield impressive yet again in the league, and the big spending club fail at the Valley. This is the League One review episode. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good whenever you are watching this. This is, of course, the League One Lowdown brought to you by the Deck Podcast Network. I'm Seb Jones, the usual preview host, and I'm joined today by someone different. Jamie is on an international trip watching the ice hockey. So, joined by Callum today, who you may recognise from the previous show. Callum, how are you doing?
Hello, Seb. I'm not too bad. We've seemed to have drawn the short straw because both the others are in. I think one's gone to warmer climates. Obviously, Jamie's watching the ice hockey. So yeah, we've had it a bit rough, haven't we?
Indeed, we have. Yeah, stuck in Lincoln and Sheffield respectively. But you got the sunshine. So view the positive. So stuck with us too for this preview episode. Lots to chat about in terms of the games that happened in the last game week. We mentioned in a little teaser before we started about the Yorkshire derby, Mansfield winning yet again, and Birmingham crumbling. We'll get on to all of that in a short while. But before we do cover any of those results, a little bit of breaking news really regarding Reading Football Club. So they released a statement on Monday evening about 4:30, confirming two things. So first of all, they confirmed that the club has agreed to a period of exclusivity with a potential purchase. Both parties are working hard to finalise terms with the intention to complete a sale at the earliest opportunity. Before we get into the second news, Callum, this is actually quite big for the club, isn't it?
Well, it's the thing that's just struck me is the fact that there's no name yet, which I think you can either read into it as a good or a bad thing, can't you? I guess it's a good thing that it's being kept out of almost the media spotlight, because we know whenever that's happened, those deals always seem to fall apart. I don't know whose fault that is. We don't know what happens inside these negotiations, although I imagine a lot of us can take a guess as to why these negotiations fall apart, but we don't know. It might be another reason. I think a lot of the time, I think the previous one was because the bidder had put in such a low ball offer that there was just no way of progressing. So a bit of good news in terms of the fact that it's happening. Obviously, the deal apparently looks like it'll include the stadium and the training ground as well. So all good to be under one roof, I suppose. But yeah, interesting. We'll have to wait and see. We've been in this situation so many times that you almost don't want to get your hopes up for them at this point. Like,
it's true. Yeah, it's true. It's happened before, and there's no need to say why it won't happen again. Having said that, it's good news, which I'm sure the fans will be glad to hear. And you mentioned it there. It does cover the stadium and the training ground as well. So plenty to be positive about. However, the second part of the two parts that I alluded to is that the club today have also confirmed that they've been placed under a registration embargo by the EFL, basically meaning that they're unable to make any signings. So I've been given a transfer ban. Nothing too imminent that should impact them, given that there's a couple of months until January. But you do wonder if the ban will still be in place for the January window. Do you think it's a big concern, Callum, or is it one of those that you think will be resolved sooner rather than later?
I mean, we don't know how long it'll take for such a deal to go ahead. That's the thing. It might be days, it might be months. We don't really know the timescales of these things. I mean, we saw with Jim Ratcliffe at Man United, a completely different altogether, because Man United obviously such a big business, and that was only a partial sale. So you can imagine how long this might take. It could be days, it could be months, weeks, whatever. The only issue I always say with Reading is how thin their squad is, and their youth teams are falling out of competitions already. I mean, we saw with the National League Cup already pulling out of that. So you wonder how you wonder how their actual squad's going to cope. So we'll hope it's resolved by January. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And that embargo has been implemented due to the late filing of the financial accounts, and that relates to the 2022-23 accounting period. So we cross our fingers for Reading, and all being well, things can be resolved as soon as possible. Now on to the football action from the weekend. Plenty of talking points, really, and I'm sure this first game we're going to allude to. Well, I'm not quite sure it's a result any of us expected, really. Charlton Birmingham. Birmingham, of course, spending their money that they have done in the summer. But Callum, I think the biggest talking point of the weekend wasn't to do with the actual action on the pitch itself in its fixture. It's more to do with the comments that were said afterwards.
No, I'm trying to find the exact quote as we speak, but I think it was something from the Birmingham manager just saying, like, that Charlton were the big spenders, and that everyone's going to compete. I mean, this is a team that I think they'd won 7 in a row, which that doesn't happen very often in League One. So I'm just like I'm a bit like, what? I don't see where he's coming from at all. But anything to deflect a bit of blame.
Well, yeah, that is for sure, and I too are scrambling to find the exact quoting, but it's bizarre, really. So Birmingham lost the game 1-0. It was Matty Godden who scored, and that was about 10 minutes just after half time at the Valley. But Birmingham, I'm sure not the result anyone really expected, and considering that the form and the way they have started the season, it is a little bit of a surprise. Charlton themselves are probably doing better than most people thought they would be, but I'm still not quite sure anyone expected them to be beating this Birmingham side that, as you mentioned, sort of were beating it in the last 5 before the game.
Yeah, thing is, Charlton, we know it's a Nathan Jones side. Like we expect what we expect from a Nathan Jones side. I have to do the maths quickly in my head, but I'd imagine there's not many games that have featured less goals. I think off the top of my head, Wigan, perhaps one of them, and Exeter seemingly the other. But not many other teams have got less goals either for and against them. If Charlton are playing, there's never many goals. You're not winning an over 2.5 goal bet on a Charlton game at all, are you? So it kind of suits them down to a T, and we're seeing it kind of from a Charlton perspective. It almost feels like maybe they're not getting the results against teams that you'd maybe expect them to get results from, but they're set up perfectly in a Nathan Jones style way to come on top against teams like Birmingham City. So it got a kind of mixed reaction for Charlton. Yeah, great to get a point at Birmingham, the unbeatable side, and obviously it's their first defeat of the season, isn't it, Birmingham? So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Again, it's one of them. We're not even a quarter of the way through the season, and Charlton still got a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of ground to make up. They're literally level on points with the playoffs. But that's also the other point on Charlton is because there's not many goals in. The reason they're not in the playoffs now is goal difference, right? You look at Stockport. They found a way to score more and concede less, and that's why they're in 6th as opposed to Charlton and Exeter, level on points, but obviously behind on goal difference. So I'm just like, great for Nathan Jones. You beat Birmingham, but maybe you need to look at a way to get more goals and boost that goal difference.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because it's sitting in 8th place, played 10, but they've only scored 10 altogether and have conceded 9. So the goal difference is only 1. Whereas, as you said, sort of Birmingham, Wrexham, Mansfield have all got 17, 18 goals so far this season. That's got to be a concern, hasn't it? Although their league position is good and is very strong, but that's got to be a concern. Matty Godden, the top goal scorer with 3 from 10 so far. Do the other players need to contribute and chip in a bit more?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? I mean, like, like we say, it's a team game, and I mean, we'll get on to Lincoln eventually, but the incredible stat from Lincoln, I think, is out like they've got like 10, 15 players already who have been involved in goals, and you need that. You need we all love a striker, and all the talk used to always be about where's your 20, 30 goals a season striker, right? And don't get me wrong, those still have a role. But if you don't have that, you need to have a whole team. And I don't think it's the players' fault. I think it's purely just the system that Nathan Jones uses, and that's not a critique because it's got them the 3 points here. And I don't want this to sound like a hit piece on Charlton at all, but that's kind of like the balance, isn't it? If you adopt the Nathan Jones style of play, you have to be prepared to not get a great goal difference, effectively.
Yeah, they're solid at the back, aren't they? And that will please Nathan Jones the most, I'm sure. So yeah, Birmingham, they're only the first defeat of the season for for them. So they'll be quite disappointed with that. We'll move on to another side that started the season surprisingly well, and that is Mansfield. So they faced Blackpool at home at the weekend. And obviously Blackpool have sort of gone on this resurgence really since Steve Bruce has come in. Won all 4 of his league games in charge since he was rather sort of left field, big fan appointment to the Seasiders, and they prevented a 5th win in a row. Did Mansfield for Steve Bruce's side? Did you see the result coming, Callum?
I don't know if I saw the result coming, but when you do look at it, it does make a little bit of sense, right? I mean, this is a Blackpool side that conceded a 95th minute equaliser. And the one thing that struck me is how quickly that stadium emptied against. I think I mentioned it on the preview podcast last week that the stadium just emptied, right? Like when that happens, you got to wonder, like, are the fans really invested in this? And as soon as they face a little bit of hardship, they seem to just disappear. And I'm not saying that's all Blackpool fans at all by any stretch of the imagination. You couldn't drag me up to Blackpool on a Tuesday night to watch a game of football in the rain at all. So fair play. And obviously, you look at when the goals came in that match, and obviously both, I believe in the first half, first in the 8th minute and then the 39th minute, both through Evans. So it makes a lot of sense that Blackpool didn't really get firing. I mean, like most of these teams I think all of them, have played 3 games in a week. So it's tough on the legs. And if you can get that fast start like Mansfield did, it is often tough to come back from that. Yeah, like I say, one that you don't see coming, but one that does make sense when you add in a bit of context.
Yeah, we've spoken a little bit about Blackpool and their resurgence under Steve Bruce. Mansfield only came up from League 2 in the summer, and they're 3rd in the table. They're above the likes of Charlton, Huddersfield, Barnsley, Bolton, Peterborough, Wigan, Reading, Rotherham. It's been a great start for them, hasn't it, really?
Yeah, and I'll say this in the full knowledge that I had a conversation with a Mansfield fan at work on Saturday. And I know I've come in for a bit of slack on the socials about my views on Mansfield. And I stand by them because the 4 games before this, you won all 4. Well done. But they weren't difficult games. They were easy games. And the fan I spoke to said he completely agreed with me. The Mansfield fan I spoke to completely agreed with me and said when they come up against tough teams, they'll struggle. And, that's fair enough. But that's not to say that this result wasn't an excellent one. Again, one I didn't really see coming at face value. And I mean, me and Sam will look back at the predictions later on in the week. But I don't think either of us have predicted this. So fair play, Mansfield. Again, I don't know whether we can start talking about them in the context of playoff hopefuls. You'd imagine your likes of your Boltons, your Barnsleys, like you say, your Blackpools, Huddersfield, Charltons will be in that conversation at some point. So whether we can consider Mansfield playoff contenders, I'm not sure, but we'll have to wait and see.
Oh, come on! You've got to at least give them some plaudits for their fast start.
I'm giving them plenty of credits. I said, you come out the blocks, grand, right? But yeah, but if this lasts, I will buy a Mansfield shirt. If you get playoffs, I'll buy a Mansfield shirt.
Ryan, I hope you're going to clip that because that.
And then I'll specifically write 4-1 on the back of it to remind you what the scoreline was back in August, Mansfield fans. There we go.
Well, yeah, I'm sure Nigel Clough's men will be glad to hear that from you. Just finally on Mansfield, just a shout for Lee Gregory. 6 goals so far this season, 34 years of age. He's still doing bits in the EFL.
Life in the old dog, in there. I mean, you look at the people that are surrounding him. Louis Barry, who, if I remember correctly, once of Barcelona fame.
Yes, yeah.
You've got, established League One strikers, Dion Charles, Alfie May, Poku as well. These are names that we expect to be up there, and Lee Gregory certainly wasn't one that I think anyone would have predicted to be up there. So, fair play.
Indeed. As for Blackpool, should they look too much into this defeat? That was the first defeat in 5. Before that, 4 wins in a row. Sort of seemed to be a new life, really, under Steve Bruce. Should they be too concerned, or is it just a little blip against a good Mansfield side?
I don't think too much. Like you say, it's a long week. And we'll get on to Lincoln in a couple of minutes, actually, but. You look at the game they had midweek. Lincoln are always a tough side to play against because you've got to play around them. Lincoln make you do the running, and then Lincoln will run at you. So that's a tiring game for them completely. And you look at the level of opposition that Blackpool have faced in the last 2 games before this versus the level of opposition that Mansfield have faced. It's about legs, and Blackpool will welcome the week off. Not supporter-wise, supporters probably won't welcome it, but yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I don't know if they're in if they're in EFL trophy action, but either way, they'll probably play a rotated side like they always do, and they'll put their feet up.
So yeah, good win for Mansfield. We'll move on to a club you just mentioned there, Lincoln City. And you seem to describe this one as a tale of 2 halves. Would you like to explain why?
It was first off was dreadful. I mean, I'm going to be biased because obviously everyone knows Lincoln fan. I don't know if it's ever been mentioned in any of these podcasts, but yeah, Lincoln personally were dreadful in the first half. But you look at Leyton Orient. Sam often describes them on any podcast that me and Sam do together. He'll always describe Leyton Orient as an areas team, and you see what he means by that. I mean, it's exactly the same language that Richie Wellens used in his post match. They're getting into the areas, but they're not shooting, they're not scoring, they're not getting the shots away, which is obviously a huge frustration for them. But they played some good stuff, did Leyton Orient. But then Lincoln, straight out the blocks in that first half. I don't want to say Michael Skabala gave them the hairdryer treatment, but when asked about it post match, Skabala basically refused to say what he said at half time. So
really not good sign.
I wonder what he said, but McCarmer off the mark in the league this season. It's his first goal since he scored against Leyton Orient last year at the same end of the ground. So it was pretty poetic, really. McCarmer off the score sheet, and then Freddie Draper with probably, I'm going to say, the assist of the weekend from Eric Gring. An incredible run and then perfect pass from the Swede. So yeah, obviously a bit of nerves at the end when Ajay, or I think I must have heard about 10 different pronunciations of his name during the whole commentary. So, but no, a bit nervy. But again, it's what you expect from a Skabala team to grind out those results. They're not doing too shabby at Lincoln. We'll have to wait and see.
I just prefer saying Leyton Orient's number 7 is probably the easiest way of getting it.
Probably fair, yeah.
How important do you think was that first Lincoln goal? You mentioned about McCarmer's first goal of the season in the league. Only 2 minutes after half-time. How crucial was it to score then?
I mean, it kind of buys into the whole of Lincoln's home form. I mean, we look at Lincoln's away form; it's been incredible, right? I think they're level with Manchester City in terms of away wins in a row, right? Unbeaten, sorry, I should say. So Lincoln City are doing pretty well away from home, but at home they're not done incredible at all. This was their first home game, sorry, I should say, since Mansfield. And that was in August. That's first home 3 p.m. kickoff. Sorry, I know Wigan was a 12:30 kickoff, and it was boring. So, but it buys into that. You get off the ground away from home, and Sincil Bank was flat. You could hear it. It wasn't a very nice atmosphere at all, really, compared to what people have come to expect. But no, that first goal from McCarmer was well deserved based on what he's done this year. A lot of people saying he should have had 2 or 3. You can't go wasting these chances, but you look into the overall improvement of him as a player, McCarmer, and he's starting to become a player that a lot of defenders are a bit worried about, which is always a bit of an honour if you're a striker.
Yes, of course. I've just clocked as well. This is the League One Lowdown Deck preview derby, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is
between you and Sam. So Sam's tactically gone on holiday.
Yes, but what I should say is that he got the prediction for this game bang on. So I got a bit too cocky and predicted 3-1, and he predicted 2-1. So he's the Deck League One lowdown champion, but I think I have the moral high ground here, and that's all that matters.
Well, yeah, and you had the team that won as well, so I think that trumps everyone.
But for Leyton Orient, though, I just they're a good side. I think, and I was listening to Richie Wellens post match, and he speaks the complete truth. Like they obviously got quite a few injuries at the minute by the sounds of it. Just need to get a goal. That's all it is. They just need to put 1 or 2 wins back to back, and they'll be fine this year. I'm not really worried about them dropping off at all.
Yeah, well, only 2 wins from 10 so far, 8 points on the board, back-to-back defeats, but before that, back-to-back draws and back-to-back wins, so that they are on a little bit of a trouble patch. You mentioned a couple of injuries there as well. Currently 1 point off the relegation places. There was quite a bit of a panic towards the start of the season that sort of seemed to fade away, but the last few results have not probably gone the way he would have liked. But you mentioned there that there's the circumstances outside of his control, really, that are affecting his start, really.
I mean, we'll get to them. We'll get to one of them at least in the second half of this podcast. But there are 4 worse teams, and they're the 4 teams in the relegation zone. I genuinely. I mean, obviously it's going to chop and change, but the 4 teams in that drop zone probably are going to be the 4 teams that go down. Obviously, managers might change. That might completely change the situation. And given a certain person's tweet, who we might be having a bit of a conversation with later this week.
Oh, was that a little plug there?
It might be a little plug for later on in this week. We're having a little conversation with someone who I have linked with. I was linking with one of the jobs, but given the events of today, I'm linking him with another one and a return, perhaps. We know he might be interested in flexing his managerial muscles at some point, but all will be revealed later in the week. But in terms of Leyton Orient, back to the actual subject matter, there are worse teams. There are at least 4 worse teams than them in the league this year, so nothing to worry about.
No, I think that's fair. I think I can't really argue with that, really, Callum. I'll be honest.
I can be nice. I can be nice about Leyton Orient, Sam.
Just sometimes. just sometimes, I think that's pretty valid. We'll just take a couple of minutes break here, and then we're going to come back to chat about some more results that took place at the weekend, and also a little summary of the other results we're not going to look at in detail. So we'll see you back in 2 ticks. Hello and welcome back to the League One Lowdown, brought to you by the Deck Podcast Network. This is the League One review show, looking at the fixtures that took place over the weekend. Myself, Seb joins, don't even know my own name. Seb Jones joined for a change, joined by Callum to chat about the weekend's action. We're now going to move to chat about the Michael Duff derby. Sort of two teams that are quite high up in the league table, but have been on a bit of a sticky patch. Would you agree, Callum?
Yeah, we look at the form guide going into this. Obviously, Barnsley had drawn the 2 games before this. Huddersfield were 4 defeats in a row, so one team probably more significantly in a dark patch. But I was watching the highlights for this game, and the one thing that struck me was one, just I don't want to say how poor Barnsley were, but how poor both sides really were. I mean, you can tell a lot by just when the goals were scored and the types of goals that they were. They weren't well worked team goals. They were good goals. Like like you don't take anything away from Wills and Kasumu. The 2 goal scorers, but they came in the 83rd and the 96th minute. Barnsley would have been shattered. That's just purely about just having a bit more energy in the tanks. And when you lose in the past 4 games, you're probably going to have a bit more energy in the tank.
Yeah.
Like, because you're not putting as much effort in. I don't want to say it's a kind of a misnomer result. You have to always take the 3rd game on 3 games in a row a bit with a pinch of salt, especially when they're all in the league. So, but yeah, an interesting result and one that will leave Huddersfield fans satisfied, and Barnsley fans apparently, as one YouTube comment saw, calling for the whole board and the manager to be sacked. So what does that tell you about football fans?
It's not happening anytime soon. I'm sorry to spoil the day, but yeah, I agree. It was 2 poor teams, really. No one really impressing is probably the best way to sum it up. Huddersfield had quite a lot of corners, particularly in that first half, but just couldn't do anything with it. No, both sides looked a bit lost on the ball. It's one of those that was just looking like a 0-0 right from the start. It sort of bigged up Yorkshire derby. Michael Duff back playing against Barnsley, the side he left for the Swansea job back in 2023. So that it was all sort of bigged up beforehand, but it just wasn't it really. It was quite really boring to watch. Really boring. For two of the big hitters in League One, it was an awful game. Awful.
I mean, this is kind of like the match that I'd earmarked to be almost like, I don't want to say the 3rd versus 4th side, but these are like 2 teams that you'd expect to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
100%, and just neither of them. I mean, Barnsley they'd gone on that good form, and I think they were up to 3rd at some point, and then Huddersfield, we were all saying should have been league winners. They were at one point. We were just like, how have we not clocked onto them? I don't want to say they're starting to settle back down, because Huddersfield clearly aren't. They're either winning or like they're still not drawn a game this year at all. Like they're the only side in the division not to have drawn a game, which is quite impressive.
5 wins, 5 defeats is it's almost unheard of, really.
It's almost like just some days the team show up, other days they don't. But apparently today they well, I don't want to say they showed up, because clearly, relying on an 83rd minute and it doesn't strike me as great. But at the end of the day, 3 points are 3 points, and they're only 1 point outside the top 6, and that's kind of the headline that matters, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That there's been loads of talk about Michael Duff, and you mentioned before there was 4 games in a row that before this they'd lost. So a bit of pressure was growing, but actually one result, and you just said that they're not actually that far off the playoff spot, which I think is where most people expected them to be, considering the sort of rebuild, if you like, over summer. New manager, new playing style, a lot of players leaving, new players coming in. That not bad going at all, and we have actually got to have a little bit of a reality check in that we are only 10 games in. It's a 46-game season. Of course, not the favourite teams are not going to start strong. it takes time. It takes time to get results, especially when that new manager and so much change over a short amount of time over summer. It's going to take time. So I think even though they have been on poor form, actually they're not in a bad position at all.
It's a testament to how weird the league is at the minute.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at obviously 19th below from Leyton Orient below. There's there's quite a big drop off when you get to the bottom three. Shrewsbury, Bolton, Burton, and Cambridge. They seem to just not be winning at all. Well, I think only one of them has won one game, Shrewsbury. So, but there's a 5 point gap from Leyton Orient to Bristol Rovers, which, to be fair, we kind of expected. We expected there to be at a bottom 7-6 this year.
Yeah.
Because you'd say on paper there are 7 teams, maybe not the 7 teams that we expected. I'd have probably swapped Stevenage and Leyton Orient as to maybe the teams that I expected to be down there. But we're not seeing that gap form from the mid-table like we saw last year. There was that huge gap where, it just seemed like no matter how long a team was going on a winning run for, naming no names, but they just didn't seem to be changing position. Like Lincoln, I seem to remember that they were 11th and they just didn't seem to be going any higher than 11th for a good couple of months, despite winning every game. But we're not seeing that form this year. We're not seeing almost the tectonic plates of the league table move into shape at all, really, which makes for exciting football, because in a week's time, the goal difference swing for one of the teams doesn't need to even be that mental. If Wigan get a result, we could be seeing Wigan in the playoffs next week, and that's all it takes. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, some teams have got a game in hand. Your Birmingham, Mansfield, Lincoln, Wickham. Some of them do have games in hand, and that will play a role. But it's such a tight from 18th upwards. From 18th to 6th, there's 3 points in it, and that's incredible in it. I love it.
Yeah, well, it's why we love the EFL. It's why we love League One. But it does just show that a couple of results can quite easily just turn around a side's fortune in that regards. As for Barnsley, and as for that YouTube comment you mentioned, should a Yorkshire derby defeat warrant getting rid of the hierarchy at the club?
I mean, I get where the frustrations are. This is a side that were really strong towards the end of last year, and you could kind of see them tailing off at the end of last year, sort of at times. But I don't know. I just think it's one of them knee-jerk reactions, isn't it? I mean, they'll be fine. Maybe they won't get playoffs this year, but they'll be in the top half, and that's all that matters. I mean, it's quite ironic that we're making this podcast, and we're bigging up. Is this disaster for whatnot? At the end of the day, it's just football, and if you're having a nice day out, does it matter?
Yeah.
Does it really matter?
I can see the frustration from the Barnes fans. If you take the last couple of results before the Huddersfield game, it was a draw at home to Wickham, where Barnsley were poor. Took ages to sort of get into a rhythm. Before that, it was a 1-1 draw at Stockport, they conceded in the last minute. Before that, it was an away win against Burton, but it wasn't pretty at all. And then before that, it was quite a heavy defeat away at Stevenage. So results and performances combined haven't been great over the past couple of weeks. But as we said for Huddersfield, the same is the case for Barnsley. They are, a number of high-profile players left in the summer. Herbie Kane, Devante Cole, Jordan Williams, to name but 3. Head coach left. New head coach in, new coaching staff in, new players in. You have to, these sort of sides, you have to allow time.
Things change, yeah.
Yeah, you have to allow time for the change. And, I can imagine that there's a frustration there. It's coming up to 3 years in League One. But League One's a hard division.
Yeah, I mean, we saw how much Birmingham spent, and they're not. I mean, they are slightly walking it, but if that's what it takes to walk it, then get your checkbook out, Barnsley fans, because it's not going to be an easy season if you want to get promoted at all. But then you talk about change, so that kind of leads us on nicely to the next game of Bolton.
That was done. That was done very smoothly there, Callum.
It was, wasn't it? Because I have mentioned on several occasions my frustrations with Bolton. They have got such an underrated squad. We know the quality of their players, right? But Darryl Clark's stubbornness just it really frustrates me. And the one thing that I felt like I needed to place. I mean, I am not a tactical expert. I don't know how to set up any side at all, right? I could not set up this Bolton side at all. But even I know the basics of just defending a corner. Like, come on, people. It was so frustrating. You know, okay, the first goal from, is it Feeney? You know, that was, okay, it was like the third phase of the corner. It was kind of a bit of a mess. But you just do the basics of getting rid. Yeah. Like, even in the 20th minute, I mean, I've not played football properly since under 12s. But even I remember just that shout of get rid. If you're defending a corner, don't fancy with this whole playing out from the back. Leave that to a point where you've actually got time to play out from the back. A corner, you don't have that chance. Just get rid of it. Stop. Yeah. For want of a better phrase, stop fannying about.
Yeah.
It's just get rid of it. And then as for the second one, Shipley, I mean, it's a great finish. We have to say it is a great finish. But why are you not charging out? Why are you? There was just no desire to close them out, close him down at all. And again, it's the basics of get out. You hear it screamed in Sunday League all the time. Get out. They just didn't want to do that at all. And that was my frustration with Bolton. Because they had two goals of individual, decent quality. But the two goals, you've got the players to do that. If your defence is having an off day, you've got the quality to do that. But you should not be having an off day. You shouldn't be conceding. I mean, with all respect to Shrewsbury, you should not be conceding 2 goals against Shrewsbury Town.
Yeah.
I think it's only 2 teams have scored less than them, Crawley and Cambridge. Only they've scored less. You should not be conceding 2 set pieces to Shrewsbury Town. If you're a promotion chaser, if you want to be taken seriously as a football club, do not concede 2 set pieces to Shrewsbury Town. It's borderline embarrassing, right? It really is. It's. I don't want to say it's pathetic, but it is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where my frustration with Ian Evatt comes, because you've got we talk so much about set pieces these days. They're the basic, like, they're so important. We see in Aston Villa and all the football clubs now, the Premier League, the set piece coach stands on the touchline at set pieces. You've got to do that. And Ian Evatt's not approaching that. And we could be talking about 2 more points for them. And if Bolton had got that 2 points, scored them 2 goals, they'd be up to 8th, and we wouldn't be having a panic over them. But as it is, they're 13th. They've got half the league ahead of them, and they're struggling. And it really frustrates me. And I'm sure Ian Evatt's a lovely guy, but sort your set pieces out, please.
It is poor, not only to concede from 2 set pieces, but in no disrespect, against the Shrewsbury side within the first half an hour, to go 2-0 down at home, it's poor for me in Evatt's side. Really poor.
It's shocking. There's no other way around it. It's borderline. It's borderline shocking. Like you say, if you want to be taken seriously, you can't afford these cock-ups at all. You cannot afford cock-ups. But then this is the result that neither side would have wanted at all. I mean, obviously, it more favours Shrewsbury. But while I think about it, you look at Shrewsbury, their last few games, right? The 21st of September, they went 1-0 up in 2 minutes against Mansfield. They dropped points there. So that's 3 points dropped. They went ahead against Rotherham. Dropped 2 points there. So that's 5 points dropped from winning positions. Obviously, they were 2-0 down against Stockport, so that doesn't count. But then they've also dropped 2 more points from this winning position. So in their last 4 games alone, they've dropped, I think, 7 points from winning positions?
Yeah. Yeah.
That, if you want to survive relegation, Shrewsbury Town fans, you cannot do that. If you'd have got those 7 points, you'd be 19th and you'd be out of the relegation zone, and you'd have a 5-point buffer. And don't get me wrong, if you'd have beat Bolton 2-0, we'd have all been having a party for you because, my God, no one would have predicted that. So fair play. But if you're going 2-0 up, if you've exploited that weakness, you can't let Bolton exploit your weakness. You've got to be able to close out games, and that's where the frustration will come from.
Yeah, they have to hang on. What do you think Ian Evatt said to them at half time, considering they scored just a couple of minutes after the half-time break? I can imagine that there was a bit of a reaction. He would have said that he wanted a bit of a reaction there. What do you think his exact words were?
It probably gave him a total bollocking. But you would, wouldn't you? I mean, I've said on many occasions, he's a great manager. Don't get me wrong, Ian Evatt, great manager. And when you could argue that the reason Bolton have not been promoted from League One for a while is because there's always been two better teams. It feels like there's always been two better teams. You saw with what last year was Portsmouth and Derby. You'd argue two better teams, and I'd agree with you, right? But just in terms of Bolton, it just really, I don't want to say it worries me, but he's got to try something new. It's all right, he's a great motivator, and that's what got them the 2 points here, I'd argue, is the motivation, not the tactical quality. Yeah. And that's where, don't get me wrong, great motivator, and he could probably whip any team into shape. But if you've not got the tactical nous to change and evolve, that's probably where I'd be like, interesting.
Yeah, he'll be fuming with that result. He'll be fuming.
100%.
Both sides will be fuming. Shrewsbury will be fuming they can't hold on, having gone 2-0 up. But as you alluded to there, it's become a bit of a recurring theme with Paul Hurst's side. But Ian Evatt will be fuming at the fact that they even went 2-0 down. And they were pretty fortunate to have rescued something out of that game. It's probably summed up their season, really, I think, hasn't it? At the minute, only sitting 13th in the table, 4 wins from 9. It's not great. Been a great start for them, Bolton, this season.
No, not really. I mean, and obviously 3 of those 4 wins have come in the last 4 games. So there's signs that they're getting back into shape. But again, if you'd have told Bolton fans that you'd be, this is the weird thing. If you'd have told Bolton fans that they'd be at 13th, they'd be livid. If you'd have told Bolton fans that they'd be 2 points off the playoffs after 10 games or 9 games for them, if they win their game in hand, which is entirely reasonable, and Exeter and Stockport don't pick up a win, Bolton go ahead. Bolton go into the playoffs. So it's not inconceivable that Bolton, and if they win that game, or even if they get a draw, they're up into 9th. So it's not the end of the world, right, at all for them. But it's also not what they'd expect. I mean, these were a Premier League side, weren't they? And that's the real. That's where it's disappointing for me, because I grew up with Bolton in FIFA 12 or whatever in the Premier League. And it's a shame to see them in League One, but there you go. There can only be 20 teams in the Premier League, so.
Well, indeed, yeah. And lucky for them, they're in League One now. So, yeah.
Lucky for us as well. Great to have them.
Well, for us indeed, yeah. Who's the one laughing now? Certainly, certainly not us. A final team that we're going to look at in detail is the game between Rotherham and Reading. So a little bit like the Shrewsbury Bolton game, it was the away side that went ahead through a Lewis Wing free kick. For me, I don't know if you've seen this, Callum, but for me, I think the goalkeeper's going to do better with that one.
I've not seen the highlights for this one, but again, it's kind of like the worry for Reading, isn't it? I mean, we said at the start of this podcast that it's the squad depth, and if you go ahead and then concede 2 second-half goals, it kind of points out where's your substitutions to close out a game.
Yeah,
that's my thoughts. Yeah.
No, I agree. It's poor to go ahead. They went down to 10 just before 70 minutes as well. I think the goalkeeper the Rotherham goalkeeper could have done better with the Reading goal, but it's a good finish from Lewis Wing. But yeah, for Rotherham to come back again quite early on in that second half, scoring in the 49th and 56th minute, and then to sort of hold on and see it out until half time. I think that sort of shows great character. We know Rotherham have not had the finest of starts this season, but they're beginning to show signs of consistency.
Yeah, and it's kind of that Rotherham. I don't want to say the Rotherham grit, but the Steve Evans grit that we see.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
of staying in games and whatnot. But I don't know. What can you really take about a 92nd minute winner against Cambridge? Not a lot. And then what can you take from coming from just one goal down against a Reading side that are probably already shattered after just 10 games? Like when we talk about tired for Reading, I mean, it applies to all teams, but specifically Reading. Like, they're so tired both mentally and physically.
Yeah.
Could you imagine being a player at that club? Like, it's going to be so draining. Like, you don't know what shirt you're going to be playing for, really, at all. So yeah, Steve Evans, I'm still to be convinced. I still think it's a really weird appointment, but 3 points are 3 points.
Well, yeah, I that's interesting. I thought it was a weird appointment at the time when he came in, because he came in, with a couple of games left to go last season, when basically the relegation had been confirmed. So I thought that time was weird. I think the summer signings have made good summer signings, just a lot of them.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, he's a second half of the table manager that gets teams into the top half, like we saw with Stevenage. He's not a playoff. He's not that. That's what he is to me. So, but I mean, if it works, obviously, there's people much more qualified at football than me. I'm just a bloke who has a rant every now and then about people. So, clearly must see something. Talking about seeing something, someone must be seeing something in Gary Monk that I'm not. But that's probably something I'll rant about on the preview podcast at some point.
Yeah, save yourself for them. Save yourself for when Callum's back. But yeah, interesting result there for Rotherham United at home. I think that's about it, Callum. For the review episode. Have you found it?
Yeah, not too shabby. I love going on rants, and I think I said to you before we came on air, so to speak, that there's a few people that in this league that really need to wake up, and I think some of those names have become blatantly obvious during this podcast.
Don't know what you mean about that. Don't know what you mean. Yeah, that's it from us here. Thank you very much for joining. Callum and Sam will be back later on in the week to preview the minimal amount of games going on in this international break. I think
might be joined with a very special guest as well.
Any clues?
I think there are a few clues on there, but I think I once described him. So this is how I'm very shocked that we've managed to get this chat. I think I once described him as like a crazy madman, but only in the best of ways, because I think he's absolutely hilarious and by all means a great chat. And I'm really looking forward to speaking to him.
A crazy madman with a great chat. Well, I too am looking forward to see your chat with this guy. Everyone else, stay tuned on our YouTube channel, on our Spotify account, and however else you listen and watch the podcast. But from this League One Lowdown review episode, it's goodbye from me and Callum, and we'll see you in the next one.